Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to the third session of our Islam study circle. And as we have already outlined, the format which we follow in this session, in this circle, is that initially we discuss something which relates to our practical life and specifically issues of ethics and morality. And in the second part, we generally take up some common misconception regarding Islam. So as far as the first part is concerned, which deals with some of the important behavioral and attitudes that we should adopt, the right mannerisms and the right directions in this regard, the topic that I have chosen today for you is we'll speak about something regarding charity and charitable behavior, because this is something which is of primary importance. If you study the Quran, you'll find out that the Quran has actually encapsulated its directives of the prayer and to give in the path of God and juxtapose them and place them together a number of times. So it seems that there are two foundations of our religion. The first foundation relates to our relationship with the Almighty, which is through the prayer. And the second foundation of religion relates to our relationship with our fellow beings, and that is through charity and charitable behavior. So let's talk about today regarding charitable behavior and how we as individuals can come up to the mark regarding charity and charitable behavior. So when I say charity and charitable behavior, let me explain a little more. Charity in itself is something which deals or which actually regards some of our spending that we do for the cause of God. And as far as charitable behavior is concerned, it of course does not merely restrict itself to charity, which I mean is spending in cash or in kind, but it actually reflects a behavioral pattern. It reflects an attitude that we need to adopt when we are dealing with our fellow human beings. So if I can give an example, just as we have parents and we have our siblings, so in a very similar manner, we have the Almighty and we have our brethren. So in case of our parents, we are looking up to someone. In a very similar way, in case of God, we are looking up to our Creator. And since He has not only created us, He has also created our brethren, our fellow human beings. So therefore, we have this two-pronged relationship with the divine in the vertical direction and in the horizontal direction with our fellow human beings. So as far as these horizontal direction is concerned, in which we are dealing with our fellow human beings, I'd like to say that the first and foremost thing that we need to understand when we are spending in charity, or when we are, for example, up to the fact that we are facing some calamities in our country, or the fact that there is no calamity, but we have a lot of people around us who might be needing our charitable behavior. So there are some things of caution that we need to be very, very careful of. And I'd like to point them out. First of all, if we are giving something in charity, it has to be understood that we must not show off our charitable behavior. For example, if we are spending some money for the cause of some maybe charitable organization or an individual or any person, it is absolutely against the norms to brag about and to boast about our charity or the charitable behavior which we have adopted. Because you see, the basic purpose of charity is to elevate you spiritually. And this can only be achieved if this spending remains between you and your Almighty. If you start showing off and you start telling other people what you have done or what you have achieved in this regard, more often than not, it is counterproductive. Of course, there is an exception in this regard, in which perhaps when we teach our children or our young ones, at times we spend in charity before them, so that they are induced, so that they are encouraged, so they are urged that they too should adopt a charitable behavior. So that's like an education. So that's an exception. I'm not talking about that. If we do spend in the cause of God and we would like our children to follow our example, then this is of course something which we should do. But what I'm talking here is about our general behavior, in which whenever we do a good deed, whenever we spend in the path of God, for the cause of God, we end up trying to actually tell people what we have done. We would like ourselves to be noticed. Now, this is something which is very counter, as I said, to the charity spending that we are required to do, because the basic purpose of charity spending is lost. Now, the second pitfall, or the second area in which we should be very careful, is that we must not remind people that we have been charitable to them. Because this often happens that when we have a difference of opinion with people, we remind them at times that in the past we had been spending on you, we had been giving to you a lot of money, for example, and then what we do is that we actually hurt that person. Because if we are hurt by him or her, then we have to place that hurt in its proper context and deal with it, instead of reminding him or her about our past charitable behavior. So the Quran says, "La tubtilu sadaqatikum bil manni wal aza." Don't create this evil portion in your charity by reminding other people of your favors on them and thereby hurting them. So this is the second thing that we must avoid. We must absolutely avoid that. We must never remind our people, to the people to whom we have been charitable. This would be a very mean thing, a very wicked and a very wretched thing. So let's be very fair in this regard, as I said, that we must not remind people of our favors. Thirdly, my dear participants, another important thing is that if we have to refuse someone vis-a-vis charity, then let it be in a very, very congenial way, in a very polite way. We must not scold people. Of course, we know that there are people around us who have taken to beggary, or other people who might not have taken to beggary, but they keep asking us about money. And at times we get irritated because of their repeated demands. But then again, this is an area in which we have to exercise restraint. We must tell ourselves that people who are in bother, people who are in pain, people who are deprived, it is something very difficult for them to contain themselves. So if they ask us repeatedly, at times it is their own compulsion. They cannot do without it. And we should take this particular aspect into account, and we must not scold them. We must not tick them off in this area. We should politely refuse them. At times, of course, our pockets are not in a position to spend on others. So the best thing is to just give a polite refusal and tell them that you can, of course, come back again. And another thing in this particular area I'd like to point out is that at times when our own pockets are empty, what we can do is we can, of course, ask our friends. We can ask other people around us. We can just give a phone call. We can write a WhatsApp message to our acquaintances and ask them that I myself am not in a position to help such and such a person, but if you can help such and such a person, it would be a great thing to do. So it's just not your own self that you should be always aware of. You can always ask your friends, your acquaintances, your immediate surrounding, people who live there, that if they are able to help, because many a time there are people who are waiting to be called upon and they can help you out. It's just a question of we being shy. At times when someone asks me and I have nothing in my pocket, I do shy away. I tend to shy away. Okay, why should I ask for money for someone? But remember, we are not asking for ourselves. We are asking for someone else. At best, we shall be refused. So what? We always have other opportunities. We have a list of friends, don't we? We have a list of acquaintances, don't we? We have so many people to turn to. So just by circulating a message to other people can at times work. And similarly, never underestimate, my dear participants and my dear viewers, the power of dua. At times we are helpless, at times even our friends are helpless to help other people. But the Almighty, the Creator of the heavens and the earth, is never helpless. If we present our petition, if we present our demand before Him and place our demand before Him, we of course are not asking for our own self. We are asking God to help us in acquiring funds, in gaining funds, in trying to gather money for someone else. So these are all the things that we can do in this regard. A person who is geared towards charity never loses hope. If he does not have anything in his own pocket, he is always trying to wring the pockets of other people. And if that is not working, he is always praying to God to help the person relieve his misery. Now, another thing also that I'd like to point out, which is of course another pitfall, is that at times we shy away if we have a very small amount. For example, there are calamities, there could be areas, there are national calamities, we have floods, we have earthquakes, we have so many things which happen. And in such calamities, there is generally an appeal which organizations, which NGOs make, and even the governments make, But at times, since we have very little in our pocket, maybe a couple of dollars or a couple of rupees, we shy away, thinking that what good are these 10 rupees or $1 or a couple of dollars for this huge cause or for such a huge calamity. So that is the area in which we have to be very careful. Even if we have a penny, even if we have a very small thing, we must not shy away from spending. Because our test by the Almighty is to give whatever we are able to give. If at that particular instance we just have a couple of rupees or a couple of dollars or a few pounds, that's what's going to count. And you never know that as you add a drop in the ocean, as you add your own share in the ocean, it grows. And if people start thinking that their small amount will make no difference, then of course that large amount will never be created. These small amounts, these small things, they actually make that amount very large. So this is a very, very important thing. And then viewers, I'd also like to point out that this charitable behavior is something that we should teach our children as well. And you know, the best way to teach our children in this regard is that I think that we should, just as we give pocket money to our children, we give them money for their own expenses, let us allocate a small portion of that pocket money towards charity. And we tell our children, look here, if we are going to give you so much amount for your own expense, okay, one small part of that amount is to be spent on others. You're not going to spend that amount on your own self. For example, if you're giving a pocket money of, let's say, $100 to your child or $50 to your child, tell him or her that $5 or $10 from this money belongs not to you, but it is given to you for the purpose of spending on others. So again, this is an area in which we have to teach our children, and the best way to teach our children is to give them money to spend on others. That's, I think, an idea in which, if it is adopted by our parents, it can be very beneficial for our youngsters. Then, my dear viewers, also important is the fact that we have to realize that all of us one day will never be in this world. We have to pass away. It's something of a given. We are all destined to die. So let us try to do some charitable works before we die, which can become sadaqah-e-jariyah for us once we pass away. So when we do an act of charity, of course, in our own lives, it's beneficial for us because we have done it for the cause of God. But if we do a charitable act in a way in which that charitable act continues to benefit people even when we pass away and even when we die, then that is what is sadaqah-e-jariyah. And I think this is the best way in which we can continue to reap the benefits of our works and of our deeds. And thus, for example, if we are able to save money to maybe educate people, to maybe contribute in a hospital or in an old home where people are being looked after, or any organization which is working for the welfare of people, if we contribute in that organization, as long as that organization is working and the money that we put in is put to use for other people's charity and their own needs, and even if we pass away, that will become a continuous source of reward even when we die. And that is precisely what is called sadaqah-e-jariyah. So let us also think that we have to become people who not only spend and give in their own lives, but also they become a source of giving even when they pass away. Okay, another thing that I'd like to point out regarding charity and charitable behavior is that at times this charity and this charitable behavior is not possible because we have not saved enough for our own selves. So again, I'd like to give the suggestion that just as we save for a rainy day, just as we save for our children, just as we save for future, for any need of our future, it could be our daughter's wedding, it could be our future needs when we retire. We have so many things for which we save. My suggestion is let us also save some money for charity every month. And the best way is to save some very small amount every day. Maybe some half a dollar every day, a dime every day, or if you're talking of rupees, maybe 50 rupees every day, and just put them in a sachet or in a box every day or every second day, and you'll end up with a substantial amount of money at the end of the month. And even if you gather the money, if you collect the money for more than a month, you will be having that money in which you can spend for others. So we need to save for charity as well. Just as we save for our own selves, just as we save for our progeny, for our children, let us save money for charity, which means, of course, that particular money is being saved every day, so that whenever a person comes along, we are not there to refuse him. We have something in our pockets, something stored up for them. And this is something which, of course, will make us very spiritually elevated. Also, my dear participants, and my dear viewers, let us also understand that charity and charitable behavior, as we always know, that famous saying is, charity begins at home. So this charity, first of all, has to go to your nearest people who are living under you. For example, they could be your colleagues, they could be your friends, they could be your relatives, they could be a friend in distress, people who are near you. So as the saying goes, charity begins at home. It means that we have to start charity right from the people who are very close to us, our servants, our attendees, the people who work for us. I live in Pakistan, which is a third world country, and we have servants who work for us. And of course, when servants work for us, at times the salary is not sufficient for them to put all their expenses in use. So they still need extra money. For example, they could have a daughter's wedding in the offing, they could have a child's fee that they need to pay, and they could have a house that they need to build, and there are so many other things, illness, sickness, etc. So if we know someone who is close to us, if we have a driver, if we have a guard, or if he is a friend, any person who is close to us, instead of looking at other charities and looking here and there, the best place to start is right under our nose. People who are closest to us, people who are very near us, they are the people who are the most important recipients and the most significant recipients of our charitable behavior. Also, my dear listeners and my dear viewers, we also need to understand that this charity is an attitude. Giving of charity is an attitude that we need to inculcate in our own selves. The Quran says, "Allazina yunfiquna bil-layli wan-nahari sirran wa alaniya," which means the believers are those who spend day and night for the cause of God, whether they are hidden or whether they are apparent. Their spending is hidden or apparent. So the words "Allazina yunfiquna amwalahum bil-layli wan-nahar," night and day, it does not mean that they spend in night and day. It's like a sentence and we say that he does this all the time. So night and day actually tells us in Arabic that they are always on the lookout to find people around them who they might help. And in this regard, my dear viewers, I'd like to point out an area in which we might not be very attentive to and we might be neglecting, and that is people who might be in need and who are very close to us, but they could be this thing which keeps them from begging. It's very difficult to beg to other people. I know that, of course, all of us know how difficult it is, how hurt we feel, how our ego hurts when we extend our hand to receive money from others. And there are so many people, these white-collar people, say they have such a sense of honor in them that in spite of the fact that they might not be having a meal at night or a breakfast in the morning and many other problems, but they would not ask other people. They'd rather sleep hungry. They'd rather overlook their needs than to ask other people. So this is a very important area that we have to reach out to them. It is we who are obligated to reach out to people who are in need, but because of their sense of honor, they don't ask for charity. And this is a big test for us, because if we, living in a country, living in a society, are not aware of people around us, that person could be our neighbor, that person could be a very close friend. And if we are not aware of his circumstances, if we are not aware of his proclivity in which we know that he's not going to ask for money, then of course this is something of a shortcoming on our part. So we have to look out for such people. Our antennas have to get tuned. Our antennas have to get tuned to such people, to find out such people. Where are they? Of course, they are all around us, but they are not going to come to us. We have to reach them. We have to go to them. So this is an important area that we must always realize, that at times people who are full of honor, full of self-respect, they will not extend their hands, but we have to locate them. We have to find them out. They are in our society. They are very near us, very, very close by. So therefore, let us be very vigilant regarding them. This is of paramount importance. Another area of charity that I'd like to point out here, my dear viewers, is that we have to spend what is pure for the cause of God. The Almighty does not accept money or things which have been obtained by ill-gotten means, from haram means. The Almighty says that only pure wealth will He accept from us. So wealth that we gain from any illegitimate mean, it has no weight before the Almighty. So we have to be careful that we have to earn halal as well, because only halal income and halal things are accepted by the Almighty. And we have to be very careful in them. So this is as far as charity is concerned. Now, my dear participants, I'm just going to say a few words regarding charitable behavior. And before I actually come to this charitable behavior, I'd like to point out one very coveted area of charity, something which lies at the pinnacle, at the very top of being a person who is very, very sensitive towards charity. And that is, at times, we have enough money for our own selves, for a particular need. And here comes a person who has a more pressing need, or maybe an equally pressing need as the need that we have. And instead of fulfilling our own need, we need that money that we have saved for us. And when we see a person who has exactly the same need, maybe, or exactly the same amount that we have, so our normal reaction would be that, okay, if I have the money, why should I give it to that person? Because I also need that money. I also have a very pressing need that I have to dispense with. So my natural, normal, or general reaction in general circumstances would be that I'd say, okay, I don't have the money. But you see what the Quran says, and lo and behold, it's something very astounding. It's something so sublime, so out of this world, that one really gets drenched with the love of the Almighty. And that is, the Almighty says that the topmost point of charity, the highest point of charity is when He says in Surah Hashr, يُؤْسِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ, which means that believers are those people who, in spite of being in need, they give preference to the needs of others. And this is something of an outstanding nature, that we have the amount saved up for our own self. We don't know what will happen if we give away that money. Maybe you have to pay a bill tomorrow or something very important day after tomorrow. But here comes a person who has a similar pressing need. So let me narrate to you a couple of, or just a single example in which, in fact, I have so many experiences which my elders and my colleagues have told me in this regard, that whenever they have attempted to give away what they had for the cause of God, it was such a sublime experience, but that when they gave away their money and they knew that they'll be needing that money the very next day or the day after, somehow something happened and the Almighty reimbursed not only that amount that we gave, but much more. And this is where my elders and my very, I would say, relished and cherished teachers have told me that we cannot see God, of course. We cannot touch God, of course. But here we can experience God. It is here that we can experience God. Because if you spend for others, He comes down and He gives you the money which you had spent and much more. So this is an experience which one has to go through to understand how one will actually feel when this happens. And as the Quran says, this is the pinnacle, that you give in spite of being needy. And when you give for the cause of God, we must remember, as I said, the Almighty never deprives us. It might be a temporary thing, but ultimately when our need is going to be met, or we need that money for that particular time, much before it, the Almighty will replenish us not only with that, but with much, much more. And this, I think, is a very, very high spiritual experience in which we can experience God, in which we can be motivated by the presence of the Almighty, who we can never see. So this is as far as charity, and I'm going to skip the charitable behavior part because we are running out of time regarding the first session, inshallah, as soon as the break ends, in which you can ask questions about this particular segment. I will next take up some of the misconceptions, but let me just wind up this charity by just saying that before we pass away, we can die any moment. Any person can be called by the Almighty anytime. Let us always try to give for the cause of others, and the best thing that we can give for the cause of others is, for example, what we have. Of course, that is in store, but let us also make a will in which we can donate our organs for humanity. Our eyes, our heart, our kidneys, even stem cells of our skin, our hair, they're all valuable to other people. They're all valuable to other people. So let us make this will that before we pass away, we write a will that whenever we pass away, all our organs, which are of course our charity when we pass away, it's like a sadqa jariya again, the biggest sadqa jariya, in which we donate our eyes. You imagine a person who is blind or who could not see, his eyes would be lit up by the cornea transplant that you are able to donate to him. I think it's one of the most beautiful feelings that a person can experience, in which he can light up the world of a blind person. So let us also write down a will in favor of organ donation, because I think this is one of the very topmost charities that we can do. And again, what we would do, we not even know what's going to happen. It's just a question of telling our heirs and our household people that when we pass away, and please don't become a hindrance in making us donate our organs to other people. So with this note, I come to an end to this first session, and in the next session, inshallah, we'll take up a misconception. But before we do that, if you have any questions regarding this first session, I'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you.